Seid bereit.
Hey, Dutchies, it's Doug. Welcome back to another episode of your PA Dutch Minute. I have a serious philosophical question for you, or a historical question, too. I guess we could think about it that way. Think about your answer to this question. Did stuffed pig stomach help bring an end to the Cold War? It's an honest question. You might say to yourself, our beloved stuffed pig stomach, a delicacy among the Pennsylvania Dutch, affecting global peace and the reunification of Germany? What? Maybe. I don't know. That's what we're going to talk about today because I'm going to try and draw a parallel between those two things: stuffed pig stomach, Seimaage, Hog Maw, whatever you call it, and Europe as we know today, and the downfall of the Soviet Union. How are you going to make that connection, Doug? Let's talk about it, because today's topic is what becomes known as Saumagen Diplomacy, or pig's stomach diplomacy. It's real. I'm not kidding. Let's jump right in, dear friends. So, for those of you maybe that aren't Pennsylvania Dutch, but you enjoy the channel because you're learning about Pennsylvania Dutch culture, let's talk about this dish that the Pennsylvania Dutch call Seimaage in our language, literally pig's stomach, stuffed pig stomach, in the region of Germany where a lot of us come from, the Palatinate region. Not all of us, but many of us have roots there. It's called Saumagen. So really close to the Pennsylvania Dutch, of course, literally the same thing, pig stomach. And if you've never eaten this, many of you watching this video are like, oh, I love stuffed pig stomach, or it's the one thing that grandma made that you never ate because you were grossed out by it. And that's okay. Everybody to each their own, right? But this dish that we Pennsylvania Dutch love, or many of us love and cherish and honor, Seimaage, or stuffed pig stomach, does originate in the Palatine region of Germany, again, where many of our ancestors have roots. There, it's called Saumagen, and it is as it's called in the local dialect there in Pfälzisch. Nobody really knows for sure. I've seen tons of articles online that there are some historians, some food historians are saying that the actual dish is crossed over in many other cultures, of course. Someone say, is it like haggis, what they eat in Scotland? Well, kind of. You're using an organ as a sack, essentially, that you are stuffing it with other ingredients and then using that stomach as a vessel to cook these other ingredients. There are recipes, written recipes as far back as the 1500s in this part of Germany that talk about Pfälzer, about Saumagen. I have a picture here of what it looks like in Germany. We're going to talk more about how it's a little different from what we make here in the United States, but there are totally tons and tons of similarities. And if you go to this region of Germany, you go into any restaurant, you have a really good chance of opening the menu and seeing what's on the menu called Pfälzer Teller, which literally translates into Palatine plate. And I'll show you an image of what that would look like here in a minute when you actually get it. We'll come back to that. But one of the components of a Pfälzer Teller is Saumagen, stuffed pig stomach. Now, I know there's going to be people that are going to argue with me because everybody's recipe here in Pennsylvania Dutch country is different, right? It depends on what you stuff it with. Some people are, my family only uses potatoes, onions, sausage, and that's it. And then there's people that go crazy and you have different herbs and spices. You have a bread pate mix that they put in to like bind it all together. Some people don't use a binding. However you eat it is how you eat it. I'm not saying there's a right or a wrong recipe out there for stuffed pig stomach. I've had multiple kinds. I love them all. I have yet to find a stuffed pig stomach that I didn't enjoy there. I said it. In fact, when we were shooting our first documentary, Hibbevi Driva, The Roots of Pennsylvania Dutch, I had the opportunity, and those of you that have seen the movie, it is available on Amazon to stream. While we were in Germany, we got to film with Chef Roland Koch, and there he is. And I'm in the kitchen, and we make their version of stuffed pig stomach in this restaurant that dates way, way, way back in Bockenheim, which is a city there in the wine region of the Palatinate. And there were a lot of commonalities between the pig stomach I was used to having and his version. Of course, he would tell us on camera that his version is the best version. I get it. And you can see the finished product there in the bottom right-hand corner. It looks a little different maybe from what you're used to, or depending how you make your pig stomach, it might look, oh, that looks just like ours. It all depends what you grew up with, right? But this is a huge thing in Germany. As I mentioned already, in the Palatine, there's this dish called the Pfälzer Teller, literally the Palatine plate. And when you order it, this is pretty typical of what you would get in a restaurant in that region of Germany. It's going to come with a slice of Saumagen, a slice of pig stomach. It's going to come with a Leberknepp, which is a liver dumpling. That's that ballish looking thing on the right. It's going to come with Brotborscht, a bratwurst, a piece of sausage, and oftentimes with sauerkraut. Sometimes you'll also get it with Grumbeerstampes, mashed potatoes. And in this region of Germany, since it is the wine region of Germany, you're not usually eating the Pfälzer Teller with a beer. You're eating it with a glass of wine, or what they call a Weinschorle, which is a mixture of wine and mineral water, which is really popular in this part of the southern Pfalz on what they call the Weinstraße, the wine road. Most times you're getting this with a Riesling. That's probably the most popular wine that's produced in that region. Some of the best Rieslings in the world are grown and produced in the Palatinate. So if you ever get the chance to travel to this part of Germany, you have to order a Pfälzer Teller at some point. And it is, for a good Pennsylvania Dutchman, it's heaven on a plate. It's all the things we want, right? It's filling, it's delicious. Sometimes it'll come with like a brown sauce that is just over the Leberknepp. It's so delicious. Trust me, you want to get that. But now, okay, Doug, you're talking about food, but where's this Cold War and diplomacy come into the story? Well, let's turn to the 1970s and 80s. Yes, we're going back, my dear friends. And I want to focus on one politician from Germany by the name of Helmut Kohl. Now, if you lived through the 80s, like I did as a kid, I grew up in the 80s, this is a name that probably will sound familiar to you. Helmut Kohl was born in 1930 in Ludwigshafen, which is a city right on the Rhine River in this area of Germany, the Rhineland-Pfalz. He would get involved in politics already as late as the 1960s. He would become the Ministerpräsident, which is the equivalent of like the governor. Think about it that way. We have these states, these regions in Germany, these Bundesländer, they're called in German, the equivalent of like a state. And each state has a Ministerpräsident, which is the equivalent of what we would think of as a governor. He was the governor of Rhineland-Pfalz from 1969 until 1976. And then he works his way up and gets onto the national scene in Germany and gets elected in 1982 as chancellor. Think of it like prime minister. So he's the head of the parliament. And, Germany has a president, but really when you think about world politics, it's the prime minister or the chancellor that he's the one that's going out and doing the business of Germany, of the German government. He would serve as chancellor of Germany from 1982 until 1998. 1998. Now, if you know your history, in 1982, there were two Germanys, right? There was West Germany and there was East Germany. West Germany was allied with us and Britain and Europe. It was a democracy. Their capital was in Bonn, in the city of Bonn. And then in East Germany, you had kind of a Soviet. The Soviets kind of oversaw it, although it was an independent country. It wasn't part of the Soviet Union, but it was a socialist state, communist state. And of course, if you know your history, in 1989, we have the famous, everything's coming to a head. We have the Berlin Wall coming down in November of 89. And eventually, as the years progress, we see the two Germanys coming back together and becoming one Germany, like we think of today. And the capital is placed in Berlin. Well, that was all of that stuff happened during Helmut Kohl's reign. I mean, he was in power for a long time, 1982 to 1998. And during this time, you think about all the things that happened in the world that was all happening in his backyard. We had, like I said, the fall of the Berlin Wall. We had the Cold War going on. The Iron Curtain ran through his country or bordered his country. The threat of constant nuclear war with the Soviets, and trying to maintain relationships with his allies in the West. He was very pro-America, very pro-Europe. And we see him on the global stage, trying to bring about peace and helping to bring about peace. Luckily, he gets to see it in his lifetime. In 1989, as I mentioned, 1990, we see the collapse of the Soviet Union. We see the reunification of Germany, and we see, the destruction of communism in Europe. He would die in 2017. Now, why this guy's important in our story here is, of course, well, he was, the head of the German government during this tumultuous time in our history. And as I mentioned, he really, really, really had strong ties to the West. And he was a builder of relationships more than anything else, which I think a good politician should be. Sometimes I think we lack that in our modern day politicians, but Helmut Kohl, I think, is a good example of someone to look up to. And the one thing that he did really well was he used food to strengthen friendships and create ties. And there's this thing that becomes known in German as Saumagen Diplomacy, stuffed pig stomach diplomacy. What Helmut Kohl would love to do is whenever world leaders would come to Germany to visit, whether it was Margaret Thatcher, who was the prime minister of Great Britain, or Ronald Reagan, president of the United States, when they would come to Germany, he would make them eat stuffed pig stomach. It was one of his favorite things. It was from his home region. So he loved to take them to a restaurant that served Saumagen. And we have record that Margaret Thatcher ate it with him. Mikhail Gorbachev from the Soviet Union came and ate it. Reagan ate it with him. Bill Clinton. They all had Saumagen with Helmut Kohl. And they'd sit in these restaurants. And if you've ever been in a German restaurant, they're really cozy. These old restaurants that have been serving food for hundreds of years. The food's delicious. The ambiance is really neat. You're in this historic building. Drinks are flowing. And as you know, or I think as you probably know, I'm taking for granted that some of our best times in our life are when we're sharing a meal with somebody. It's when you really can talk to somebody because you're turning off all the other stuff. And I think Cole understood that. If you could bring people to a table, sit down, have a meal, you might be able to talk about things that when you're in front of the press or when you're at those podiums that you might not be able to say or talk about. And he used Saumagen, this dish that is uniquely Pfälzisch, this dish that's uniquely Southwestern German, to help him tell this story. Here's a famous photo of him with some important people sitting at a table. They got their glass of white wine, of course, because it's the Pfalz, probably waiting for the Saumagen to come to the table. Wow. So we know this part of the story now. And to tie it back to our Pennsylvania Dutch roots and our story, don't forget, or for those maybe that have never had Saumagen or Seimaage, I keep using the German term Seimaage, Pennsylvania Dutch. What is it really briefly? And like we kind of talked a little bit about it, but some outsiders have referred to it as Dutch goose because when it comes out, it looks like a roast bird, no wings and legs or anything. But you can see there's an image of someone that is sewing it shut. And like I said before, traditionally, there's no set thing that you have to put in them. It's a family choice. It's the recipe you grew up with. I grew up with potatoes, onions, celery, carrots, smoked sausage. That's what went into the Maidenford stuffed pig stomach. However, I've had versions of it where there was pork rib meat put in, where there was fresh loose sausage and smoked sausage, potatoes. I've had it already where it was stuffed with mashed potatoes. I've had it already where it was stuffed with chestnuts. I've had it stuffed with a bread pate, which binds it all together. There's no right or wrong. Whatever you grew up with is whatever you grew up with, that's right? Because that's what you grew up with. So traditionally, if we look at culinary history, if you read William Boyce Weaver's books, actually, if you go back far enough, we talk about early Thanksgiving, the Pennsylvania Dutch often ate Seimaage, stuffed pig stomach, for Thanksgiving instead of turkey. That would eventually change. And there was always the argument, do you bake it or do you boil it? My family boiled it and then pan fried it in butter so that the skin would get crispy. Some people bake theirs. Again, whatever your experience is in, let me know in the comment section below what your experience is. Are you a baked person? Are you a boiled person? What do you put in your pig stomach? Do you hate it? Do you love it? Please let me know as we go, in those comment sections. But as I kind of referenced already, there is a power of food that brings people together. The quote was, and I saw this a couple different places, both presidents, George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton, said that Helmut Kohl, that guy we were talking about, was the greatest European leader of the second half of the 20th century. He was a bridge builder. He was not a wall builder. He was he tore down walls, right? Helped tear down the Berlin Wall. And from the German perspective, some Germans who were not from this region of the Palatine viewed Kohl's love of this Saumagen as a sign that Kohl was unsophisticated because it's a farmer's food, right? It's a food of making use of all of your scraps to put together and to use up at the end, right? He was provincial, he was like country bumpkin. Here you have these world leaders coming to Germany and you're feeding them stuffed pig stomach. I think he saw it as a clever way to advertise not only his home region, but also his support for local butchers and restaurants. After he would have these state visits where he served Saumagen, Germans would then come to that part of Germany to taste it and try it. And Germans that weren't from that region of Germany. So, I don't know what was all said at these tables when he was sitting with Margaret Thatcher and they were eating stuffed pig stomach, or when Ronald Reagan was there and they were eating this. At the end of the day, it was a simple traditional dish that brought people together at a very tumultuous time, as the 1980s were. We didn't know how this was all going to end, right? So I leave you with the question, did pig stomach, Saumagen, Seimaage, and the Cold War, did it help create a modern day Europe? All of these things are things that we can kind of think about. What food could the Pennsylvania Dutch use to bring people together here in a very tumultuous time in our history, in the era that we're living in? Maybe it's stuffed pig stomach. Maybe that is the key to world peace. Maybe it's just red meat eggs. Maybe it's just Saumagen and Käse. Get people together and have a Dutch platter. Put some ring bologna and cheese on, maybe some pickles, and sit down and just talk. Use Helmut Kohl as an example, and maybe we can all make the world a better place. Not only bringing us together and talking, but also filling our tummies at the same time with delicious food. So I'll leave it at that, dear friends. You be the judge. Did stuffed pig stomach end the Cold War? Did it bring about a modern day Europe? Something to think about. Friends, if you are yet or new to the channel, do you know we have a website? It's padutch101.com. Check it out. And there is a central housing, a central location where all of the things that I do are stored. We have links to videos, to our YouTube channel, of course, but we also have ways for you to connect with me. You can hire me to come do a talk at an organization that you belong to or for some event. You can also check out our podcast that's there as well, and translation services, a link to our online store, zazzle.com/PA-Dutch101, which you guys know about, where you can get your own PA Dutch merch. And also, if you like what we're doing here and you'd like to financially support the channel, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Doug Mainfor to become a monthly patron at our Patreon site, patreon.com/PA-Dutch101. And you can follow along if you're on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Just look for at PA Dutch 101, where you'll get things like our monthly Monday meme of the day, our meme monda, as I say it, meme mundog, so our meme Monday. And we just have a lot of fun there where we post videos and we get conversations going with all of our friends out there. So my challenge to all of you between now and the next time I talk with you is, if you've never had stuffed pig stomach, I challenge you to try it. There are restaurants in the Pennsylvania Dutch community that still serve this dish. What's better is if you can find some old Pennsylvania Dutch woman and have her make it for you, or old Pennsylvania Dutch guy. I'm not going to be sexist here because there's some great male cooks out there, but that Pennsylvania Dutch grandma or grandpa, and have them make you some fresh stuffed pig stomach. Get over the fact that you're eating what is stuffed inside of a stomach, and you will love it. Trust me. Till next time, dear friends, keep practicing Pennsylvania Dutch. Let me know what you thought about this video in that comment section below. Answer the questions that I posed to all of you. And Mock Scoot.
Mock Scoot, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And schlock that notification bell.